Some nights feel like a long hallway. The day behind you, the world ahead, and your mind walking in the middle with too many thoughts in its hands. If tonight is one of those nights, you don't have to carry anything very far. Let your shoulders settle. Let your jaw soften. And if it feels comfortable, take one slow breath in and let it leave you more slowly than it arrived. Imagine a museum after closing time. Not loud, not bright, not hurried. Only a gentle hush, as if the building itself has learned how to sleep. In one quiet gallery, behind a glass case, a small object rests as calmly as a stone warmed by an old sun. It doesn't shine, it doesn't beg for attention. It invites your gaze to soften and your thoughts to slow down. A baked clay prism, no taller than a forearm. Its surface is covered in tiny wedge-shaped marks pressed into wet earth more than 4,000 years ago. The marks resemble rain caught mid-fall or seeds arranged in patient rows. Someone once held a reed stylus and pressed it in, lifted it, pressed again. The rhythm feels almost like breathing. Touch, release, touch, release. You can picture the scribe's hand steady, unhurried, as if writing was also a kind of listening. In that quiet work, there is no need to persuade, only the calm intention to record what must be remembered. This prism holds a list, an ancient sequence of names, cities, and lengths of reign. Today we call it the Sumerian king list. It reads like a ledger, structured, repetitive, strangely soothing. A document built from patterns the way lullabies are built from patterns, and yet hidden inside that calm structure, there is a single sentence that feels like a door. Before we touch that door, let's allow ourselves to arrive here fully. If you're listening in bed, let the pillows support the back of your head. If you're somewhere else, on a couch, in a chair, in a room where the day is still fading, let your body feel the surface beneath you. You're safe. You're allowed to rest. Tonight's story will not hurry you. It will only ask you to notice. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, softly, we return to the glass case. The first thing the prism tells us is not a name. It is a sentence that feels almost casual in its vastness, that kingship descended from heaven and that it was in a city called Eridu. Whether you take that as myth, metaphor, memory, or something in between, the line does something simple and powerful. It frames authority as something that arrives, something that is given, not invented, something that comes down like rain, quietly, thoroughly, and without asking permission. And then the list begins its gentle repetition. Name, city, length of reign. The pattern is steady enough that your mind can rest inside it, like listening to waves count themselves, one entry, then another. The names can drift past you like soft sounds, leaving behind only a mood. Alulim of Eridu, Alalgar of Eridu, and the numbers that follow are, at first, so large that your brain doesn't know where to place them. Tens of thousands of years, there is no exclamation point on the clay, no warning, just the same quiet format. Name, city, number. After 8 kings across 5 cities, after a total tallied with the same calm precision used for ordinary things, the prism gives us the sentence. Short, clean, almost weightless considering what it divides. Then the flood swept over. Say it slowly in your mind, the way you might speak a line you want to feel, not argue with. Then the flood swept over. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't demand that you pick a side. It simply marks a boundary as quiet as a horizon, one kind of world on one side, another kind of world on the other. And here is the gentle wonder. The list does not end after that boundary. It continues. New names, new cities, but the numbers begin to shrink, still large, but suddenly closer to the shape of human life. 600 years, then 400, then 126, then 90, like a candle being lowered into a lantern, little by little, until the light rests where our own eyes can recognize it. Tonight we won't wrestle the prism into a single conclusion. We won't force it to prove anything. We will do something softer. We will listen to how it speaks, because even in our own lives we know there are lines like this. Not always written on clay, not always announced. Lines where something ends and something else begins. A move, a loss, a quiet decision, a season that closes without a slam of the door. Sometimes the change feels like punishment. Sometimes it feels like a gentle closing, allowing the world to move on its own. To you, does the overflow feel like a punishment? Or a gentle closing? Hold that question the way you might hold a warm cup, without needing to drink it all at once. Just let it warm your hands. In the next part, we will step closer to the list itself. We will let the names and cities pass by like constellations. We will follow the steady rhythm of name, city, reign, and notice what changes after the boundary in the softest way. For now, the prism rests behind glass. The wedges rest in clay. And you can rest too, knowing that tonight's journey begins with something very small, a single line carved long ago, still whispering in the quiet. Let the museum stay dim in your imagination, the way a late lamp stays dim on a bedside table. The glass case is cool and still. The clay prism rests inside it, and the longer you look, the more the world feels made of small, patient details, the soft gleam of light along an edge, the faint shadow under the object, the quiet space around it that seems to say, you can slow down here. If you could hold the prism, only in your mind, only gently, you might notice the warmth baked into it, the way fired clay keeps a memory of heat. The corners are slightly worn, not dramatic, just softened by time. And everywhere those tiny marks, wedges pressed at angles, each one a small decision, each one the length of a breath. This is how the story is kept tonight. Not in shouting, not in spectacle, in a texture. Cuneiform, the wedge writing, begins as something practical, a method for recording grain, sheep, jars, days. But on this prism, the marks carry more than accounting. They carry a kind of permission. They say, this is who held the center. This is where the center was. This is how long the center lasted. And the list begins again, with that calm rhythm you can almost sway to. Name, city, reign. If your mind wants to wander, let it wander. The pattern will keep the place for you, like a slow drum in the distance, or the steady repeat of a train at night. The first city is Eridu, old as an idea. In the imagination of the scribes, it is where kingship first settled, like a bird choosing the first branch. Then the names arrive, Alulim, Alangar, and the years, large enough to feel like mountains in the dark. 28,000, 36,000, numbers that don't ask you to believe, only to notice how the text makes room for immensity. Some scholars have suggested that these huge lengths echo a unit the scribes like to stack neatly, a base of 60 that fits together like smooth stones. One block becomes another, a sar, a neat bundle of years, and when you hear that, it can feel less like an impossible claim and more like a way of arranging time, so it sits still on the page. You don't have to hold the math in your head, just feel the order, feel how order itself can be soothing. After Eridu, kingship moves, as if it is a lantern carried from one quiet room to another. Bad Tibira, a city whose name can sound like a soft bell. Larak, Sipar, Shurapak. Each place is a syllable shaped by the mouth, and each syllable has its own silence around it. Name, city, reign. Enmen Luana, Enmen Galana, Dumazid, the shepherd. Ensipad Zid Ana. Their names are long, like rivers that take their time reaching the sea. If you can't remember them, that's perfectly fine. You're not here to memorize. You're here to drift along the riverbank. Imagine the world that might have surrounded those names. Low plains where water moves slowly, reeds bending with the wind, canals shining under moonlight, mud brick walls that hold warmth through the evening, a temple platform rising like a calm thought above the floodplain, steps worn smooth by bare feet. In the distance, the sound of an animal settling down. Somewhere closer, a reed door tapping lightly in the night air. This is the when of the story, but it isn't a date on a calendar. It's a feeling. Night over a riverland, and a sense that human life is tied to water, water that feeds, water that cleans, water that sometimes rises too high. In the list, the rising becomes a line, then the flood swept over. If you say it again, you may notice how little effort it takes to carry. 4 words that do not chase you, 4 words that simply move across the page like a shadow from a passing cloud. And after that line, something changes in the cadence. The kings continue, but their reigns shorten, as if the story has stepped closer to our own scale. The numbers begin to feel like lifetimes instead of legends. 600, 400, 126, 90. It is not only a change in quantity, it is a change in atmosphere. The air feels more human, the rooms feel smaller, the lamps feel closer to the skin. In that gentle shift, you can sense why a scribe might have cared. If power is to be recognized, it must be traced. If legitimacy is to be claimed, it must be listed. The prism is not a song, and yet it has music, repetition, sequence, a calm insistence that the world has an order even when it changes. And maybe that is what your own mind longs for at night. Not answers that sparkle, but a quiet order you can rest inside. So let the names keep flowing, like water running over stones. Let the cities drift by, like distant lights. And as you listen, allow a small curiosity to form, no sharper than a soft candle flame. Among these later kings, one name will appear that echoes through a much older story, a king who once walked with questions heavy in his hands. If it helps, imagine the scribe again, not a legend, just a person at a low table, shoulders relaxed, feet tucked under, a small lamp breathing a gold circle on the clay. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside, the stylus taps, press, lift, turn. Each wedge appears, and the mind of the writer stays calm, because calm hands make straight lines, and straight lines on nights like this can feel like kindness. You can borrow that calm now without doing anything else. In the next part, we will meet him at the edge of a wall, and we will let his search soften into something unexpectedly gentle. The museum room remains quiet, but our attention drifts softly, like a curtain moving in a mild night breeze, toward one of the names that lives on the far side of the floodline. You don't need to hold the whole list in your mind, just one place is enough, one lamp in the distance, Uruk. Even the sound of it feels like a low note, steady and calm. In the prism's orderly sequence, Uruk is not introduced with fireworks. It appears the same way everything appears: name, city, reign. Yet Uruk carries a faint echo because elsewhere, in a much older story told on tablets, Uruk is the city of a king who searched for something the way we sometimes search for sleep, longing quietly for a door that will finally open. Tonight, we approach him without drama, not as a hero on a battlefield, but as a tired human being under a wide sky, listening to the world and realizing it is larger than his plans. In your imagination, let Uruk rise out of the river plain, not suddenly, not sharply. Let it appear as if you are seeing it from a slow-moving boat at dusk. The water is dark glass. Reeds whisper along the banks. A few lamps glow warm behind small windows. Somewhere a dog turns in a circle and lies down. The air smells faintly of wet earth, cooling after the day. And then you see the walls. Uruk's wall is one of those images that can be held gently in the mind like a smooth stone. Not because it threatens, but because it defines. It draws a calm boundary. Inside is the city's human rhythm. Outside is the open plain and the patient river. The wall is made from mud brick, earth shaped, dried, stacked, and shaped again. A simple technology repeated until it becomes something that endures. If you've ever built anything slowly, organizing a room, caring for a garden, keeping a habit, you understand the wall in your bones. It isn't a monument to speed, it is a monument to steadiness. Archaeologists have found traces of ancient Uruk, and when you imagine their work, you don't have to picture noisy digging or bright midday heat. Picture a calm morning instead. The first light is pale, the ground is cool, a brush moves slowly over soil. A line of brick appears, then another. The past returns not in a rush, but in a quiet reveal, one careful sweep at a time. That too is a kind of sleep story, the mind learning to uncover without forcing. In the epic that later carries Uruk's name, Gilgamesh is remembered as a builder of the walls, a king whose city was strong and ordered. But the story also remembers that he could not order everything. He could not command time. He could not stop change. And if those ideas feel heavy, we will make them lighter, the way night makes everything softer. Think of Gilgamesh not as a distant figure carved into stone, but as a person at the end of a long day. Imagine him walking along the wall at night. The city behind him is quieting. The lamps are fewer now. The air above the river plain is cool, and the sky is filled with stars that do not hurry. He rests his hand on the top of a brick. The brick is warm from the sun it held earlier, and that warmth transfers to his palm, gentle and real. In that touch, he feels something steady, something built by many hands, something that will remain even when thoughts come and go. If you are listening tonight with a mind that keeps running ahead, try this. Imagine your own hand resting on that warm brick. Not in the past exactly, and not in the present exactly, just in a quiet place where time is allowed to blur. Let the warmth be simple. Let it tell your body that it can settle. The king list, in its calm, administrative voice, gives Gilgamesh only a brief mention, just enough to place him in sequence. And that is another soft wonder, a legendary figure reduced to a line that says, yes, he existed in the mind of this tradition. Yes, he belonged to a city. Yes, his time had a length. It reminds us that history is often like this. The heart lives in one kind of story, the ledger lives in another, and both can be true in their own quiet ways. As we move through the prism's names, we begin to sense a shift not only in years, but in what kingship feels like. Before the floodline, kingship arrives from heaven, and reigns stretch like mythic landscapes. After the line, kingship feels closer to the ground. It must be counted. It must be remembered city by city, ruler by ruler, as if stability itself has become a task. And maybe that is what adulthood feels like too. Not a fall from glory, but a gentle transition into caretaking. Not being carried by something vast, but learning to hold what you have with steady hands. If tonight's story is touching something tender in you, let it be tender. Let your breathing be the only thing you have to do. In and out. Slow enough that the exhale feels like letting go of a small weight. Somewhere in Uruk, a scribe could have been awake while others slept, copying a story onto fresh clay. The lamp's flame would make the wedges sparkle for an instant, then fade back into matte quiet. Outside, the river would keep moving, indifferent and kind. Inside, the stylus would tap, press, lift, like a metronome for the heart. Listen closely, and you can almost hear that gentle tapping become your breathing tonight. In the next part, we will follow Gilgamesh away from the wall and into a quieter kind of challenge, one that, strangely, is about sleep itself. There is a strange kindness in the way the night holds everything. It doesn't demand that you solve, it doesn't demand that you decide. It simply gives you a softer edge to think against, and if you stop thinking, it doesn't mind at all. So let Uruk remain behind us like a warm lamp seen through a window. Let the wall become a quiet outline in the distance. And let the story follow Gilgamesh, not into danger, not into shouting storms, but into the most familiar place of all, the place where the body finally chooses rest. In the old epic, Gilgamesh searches for something that no one can keep for long. He walks far, speaks with strangers, listens to winds, crosses waters. But tonight we won't carry every step. We'll arrive at one moment, gentle and almost intimate, where the story offers a kind of calm experiment. It happens when Gilgamesh meets Utnapishtim, the one who survived the flood in that ancient telling. You can picture Utnapishtim not as a booming prophet, but as an old person with patient eyes, someone who has lived long enough to know that the world changes without asking. They speak quietly, as if loudness would be disrespectful to the river. And then Utnapishtim proposes a test. Not a test of strength, not a test of battle, a test that feels almost like a mirror held up to anyone listening to a bedtime story. Stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights. The line is simple. The challenge is calm, but it contains a soft truth. If you cannot overcome sleep, how can you overcome time? And here is where the story becomes unexpectedly gentle, especially for someone listening in the dark. Gilgamesh tries. He intends to keep his eyes open, to prove something to himself, to the world, to the quiet laws that govern human life. But almost immediately, without drama, his body does what bodies do. It takes him into sleep the way the tide takes a boat. He falls asleep, not because he is weak, but because he is human. And in that moment, the epic does something tender. It doesn't scold him. It doesn't turn the failure into humiliation. Instead, it turns it into a quiet image. While he sleeps, Utnapishtim's wife bakes bread each day and places it beside him, 1 loaf per day, like a soft calendar made of warmth. You can see it clearly, the loaves lined up in a calm row, the first still warm, the surface soft and fragrant, the second cooling, the third drying slightly at the edges. Over time, the bread changes, hardening, staling, becoming a record of passing days without a single shout. Time measured not by clocks, but by the slow transformation of something simple. If you want, let your mind rest on that image. A small room, a sleeping figure, a line of bread, quiet air, gentle hands moving once per day, no hurry. It's domestic, ordinary, real, and because it is real, it is soothing. Tonight, you don't have to win against sleep. You don't have to prove you can stay awake. You are allowed to be like Gilgamesh here, to try and then to drift, and in drifting to remember that this is not failure. It is the body returning to its oldest wisdom. There is another softness hidden inside this scene. Utnapishtim is associated with a flood story, an overflow, a great boundary in time. But notice how the epic treats the flood survivor now. Not as a figure who brings catastrophe, but as a figure who offers a quiet lesson. After an ending, life continues in small rituals. Bread is baked, days pass, sleep comes. In a way, the bread becomes the opposite of the flood. The flood is a single line, then the flood swept over. Bread is many lines, day after day after day. Flood is the boundary. Bread is the continuity, and the king list back on the prism is also continuity. Name, city, reign, again and again. A rhythm that suggests even when eras close, something goes on. If you've been carrying a sense that you are behind in life, or that you missed a doorway, or that time has moved too fast, let the loaves help you tonight. The loaves don't judge. They simply mark. They say, one day happened, and another, and here you are, still here, still breathing. If you'd like, take a slow breath in now, as if you are smelling warm bread, and breathe out as if you are letting your thoughts cool, in and out. When Gilgamesh wakes, he believes he has only rested briefly. But the bread tells the truth gently. The days have passed while he slept. Time has moved, not cruelly, but steadily. And that is the quiet discovery. Sleep is not a void, it's a passage. While you sleep, your body continues its work. Your mind, too, continues in its own calm language, sorting, healing, letting go. Maybe that is why the king list and the epic feel strangely aligned tonight. The list counts reigns, the epic counts loaves. Both are ways of noticing that existence is measured, sometimes in grand units, sometimes in humble ones. And somewhere between those measurements, a human heart tries to find peace. In the next part, we will return to the clay prism and look again at that flood line, not as punishment, not as terror, but as a gentle closing that changes the scale of life. And if tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. We return, as gently as a tide returning, to the glass case in the dim museum room. The clay prism is still there, still small, still patient, as if it has been waiting for you to come back with slower eyes. The light above it is warm and low, like a lamp left on in a quiet hallway, and the wedges on its surface catch that light in tiny, silent sparks. Then the flood swept over. The sentence sits on the clay like a soft seam, not a wound, not a thunderclap, a seam where one fabric ends and another begins. And tonight, instead of asking the seam to explain itself, we simply trace it with our attention, the way you might trace the edge of a blanket when you're trying to settle your mind. Before the line, the numbers stretch beyond ordinary feeling. After the line, they begin to fold down toward human length. But there is another subtle pattern hiding in those early, enormous reigns, one that feels less like chaos and more like the kind of order a tired mind can rest inside. The scribes of ancient Mesopotamia counted in a way that made the world feel neatly stackable. Their favorite base was 60, a number that divides smoothly, again and again, into friendly pieces. In that system, a sa could represent a large unit, often imagined as 300-600 years, like a clean block of time you could place on a shelf. Some of the pre-flood reigns in the king list seem arranged in multiples of that block, as if time itself were being organized into calm, repeating measures, not proof, not a debate, just a gentle noticing. Even the impossible can be shaped into pattern, and pattern can soothe. If you let it, your mind can picture the years the way the scribes might have pictured them. Not as an endless desert, but as stacked bricks. Sar upon sar, smooth, aligned, stable. A wall of time, quiet and straight. On the glass, your own reflection appears faintly, as if you are standing beside the scribe across a long corridor of centuries. The room around you is dark blue, quiet. Somewhere far away, an air vent hums like distant surf. If you breathe in, imagine the air entering like cool river mist. If you breathe out, imagine it leaving like a soft ribbon of warmth. Even the counting sard, sar, sar can become a lullaby, a steady pulse that gives your thoughts a place to land, and then to let go for the rest tonight. And then the seam again. Then the floods swept over. After that sentence, the blocks become smaller. The wall becomes closer to the hand. The years resemble something a human body can hold, a life, a generation, a reign that can be remembered by someone who lived near it. It is as if the list itself leans in and speaks more softly. From here on, the story belongs to people who must sleep, must age, must lose, must adapt. And that change, this gentle descent from the enormous into the intimate, can feel like the true turning point, because if kingship once descended from heaven, then perhaps after the seam, kingship becomes something else, something maintained, something tended, something that must be explained, counted, justified, repaired, a task, not just a gift. You can feel the difference in your own life too if you listen kindly. There are seasons when things arrive easily, help, love, opportunity, momentum. And there are seasons when the same things still exist, but they require care. They require routine, patience, and small repairs. Not because the world is punishing you, but because the world is moving forward in its quiet way. In some old Mesopotamian texts, there is a tender idea that when the divine voice becomes distant, humans learn to read the world differently. Not with panic, but with attention. A wind change, a pattern in the clouds, the way oil spreads on water, the shape of a shadow at noon. Signs, not speeches, interpretation, not direct command. And if you have ever lain awake trying to interpret your own feelings, wondering why your heart is heavy, why your thoughts will not settle, you already understand this shift. Sometimes the answers do not arrive as declarations. They arrive as small signs, a tightness in the chest, easing when you exhale, the shoulders dropping when you forgive yourself, the mind quieting when you stop demanding clarity. Tonight, the prism offers a similar kindness. It does not tell us what the flood means. It simply marks the place where meaning changes shape. The seam reminds us that a world can close without hatred, and a new world can begin without applause. So what if the overflow is not a punishment, but a closing? A curtain drawn gently at the end of a play, so the stage can be reset in silence. The audience does not need to argue with the curtain. The audience can simply stand, stretch, and walk home through the night air. If that thought feels comforting, let it rest beside you. Imagine the scribe again, in the soft halo of lamplight, pressing wedges into clay. Press, lift, press, lift. Each mark is a small act of caretaking, not dramatic, but faithful. He is not trying to conquer time, he is trying to keep the lamp lit, and maybe that is the soft truth beneath the king list and beneath the story of Gilgamesh, that the most human kind of immortality is not in refusing endings, but in tending what remains. Building walls, baking bread, writing names, passing a torch forward without burning the hand. In the next part, we will let that torch become even gentler. We will drift from the idea of kings and floods into the quieter idea of being custodians, people who care for small lights one night at a time. The museum room feels even softer now, as if the night outside has deepened and the building has slipped further into its own slow breathing. The glass case is still. The prism is still. And you, listening wherever you are, can let your body sink a little more into the surface beneath you. If your eyes are open, they can relax. If they are closed, they can stay closed. Nothing is required but presence, and even that can be gentle. Then the flood swept over. The line returns again, not as a cliff, but as a refrain, like a phrase in a lullaby that the mind recognizes and stops chasing. It becomes an anchor, a small sentence you can hold and then release. There is a way to read the king list that is especially kind for a sleepless mind, not as a battle over literal truth, not as a contest of interpretations, but as a record of how humans tried to make peace with change. Before the seam, the world is told in vast measures, reigns long enough to feel like landscapes. After the seam, the world is told in human measures, reigns that can fit inside memory, inside story, inside the length of a life that must sleep. This is not only a difference in numbers, it is a difference in posture. The first posture says, the world is upheld by something enormous. The second posture says the world is upheld by hands, and that second posture is, in its own quiet way, very beautiful, because hands can build. Think again of Uruk's wall not as a symbol of power, but as a long, steady line made from repeated actions. Someone shaped mud. Someone carried it. Someone stacked it. Someone smoothed it. Someone repaired it after rain. The wall held because many ordinary moments were gathered into one enduring thing. This is what it means to be a custodian. Not an owner of time, but a keeper of the lamp. Perhaps after the floodline, kingship becomes less like a crown bestowed from above and more like a job that must be done, a role that must be maintained, a structure that must be kept from crumbling. And in our own lives we can recognize this without sorrow. There is a stage of life when you want the world to reveal itself to you, what to do, what to be, what it all means. And then there is a stage of life when the world becomes quieter, and meaning is something you tend, not something you receive. You tend it in routines, in kindness, in the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, in the way you keep going, one small day at a time, like bread. Remember the line of loaves beside Gilgamesh while he slept? One loaf per day, each one changing texture as time moved through it. That scene is almost like a gentle prayer. The world doesn't stop because you sleep. It continues, and it continues in small, manageable increments. This is an important truth for anyone who lies awake with worry. Even if you cannot solve your life tonight, your life is still being lived in small, quiet units. You are still moving forward. The loaf of today is being placed gently beside you, whether you notice it or not. And notice, too, that Gilgamesh's story does not end with him conquering sleep. It ends with him returning to Uruk, returning to the wall, returning to what can be built with human hands. He does not take immortality like a trophy. He takes perspective like a warm cloak. He becomes in a sense, a custodian of his city, of his people, of the work that remains. That is a soft kind of wisdom, not the wisdom that shouts from a stage, but the wisdom that comes when you accept the limits of the body and stop fighting the night. Tonight you don't have to fight the night. You can let the night hold you the way the museum holds the prism, carefully, quietly, without asking the prism to become anything other than what it is. If your mind is still busy, try this small practice. Imagine your thoughts as tiny wedges like cuneiform marks. Each thought is a wedge pressed into clay, brief, angled, precise. You don't have to erase them. You don't have to follow them. You can simply notice there is a thought. There is another. They exist and then they rest. Press, lift, press, lift. Now imagine your breath is the stylus. In and out, in and out. Slow, even, unforced. And somewhere in that calm rhythm, a gentle realization may arrive. The flood in our lives, whatever closes, whatever changes, whatever feels like an overflow, does not always come to punish. Sometimes it comes to transition us from one scale to another, from fantasy to reality, from receiving to tending, from being carried to becoming the one who carries a small light forward. If that idea is comforting, let it settle. If it's not, you can set it down and simply keep breathing, because the goal tonight is not to think perfectly. The goal is to rest. And in the quiet center of this story, there is one warmth you can keep close. The world may close a chapter, but it also leaves behind what you can care for. A wall, a loaf of bread, a line of names, a lamp at a desk, a breath in your chest. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Only if you feel like it, only when you're ready. And now we will begin to drift toward the ending, not by speeding up, not by adding questions, but by returning once more to the museum room where everything is already quiet. In the next part, we will step back to the glass case, repeat the anchor line one final time, and let the names and cities fade like soft lights along a river. The museum returns in your mind the way a familiar room returns when you wake briefly at night and realize you are safe. The light above the glass case is still low and warm. The air is still. The clay prism rests as if it has always been resting, untouched by centuries, untouched by hurry. If you imagine the space around it, there is a gentle spaciousness, like the pause between two waves. It makes room for you to breathe without effort. And now, very softly, we let the story become simpler again. Not broader, not louder, simpler. Because sleep is often reached not by adding, but by letting go. On the prism, the wedges remain, countless tiny marks, each one a small footprint of attention. They're so compact, so calm, that you could almost mistake them for texture rather than language. And that is a comforting thought. Even language can become texture. Even meaning can become something your mind doesn't have to chase. Name, city, rain. Tonight, let the list be like lanterns along a riverbank. You don't have to stop at each lantern. You don't have to memorize its shape. You can simply drift past, letting the light touch your face for a moment, then fading behind you. Eridu, Bat-Tibira, Larak, Sipa, Shurupak. The cities feel like gentle stones placed in a line to help you cross water slowly, step by step, without slipping into overthinking. The repetition gives your brain a rhythm to settle into, like rocking. And somewhere along that line, the seam returns, quiet as a whisper you already know. Then the flood swept over. If you'd like, let that sentence pass through you like a breath, not a statement to analyze, just a phrase to ride. Then the flood swept over. And after it, the lanterns continue, different scale, closer light. Human life begins to fit more neatly inside the numbers. And in that nearness, the list begins to resemble what we all live, a stretch of time, a place we belong to, a period we hold the center. And then we pass it on. And this is a soft way to think about your own life too. You do not need to be a king to have a reign. Any season you lived through, any chapter you tended, was a small reign over your own inner kingdom. The years you held a family together, the years you carried responsibility, the years you learned to be alone without breaking, the years you healed. A reign can be quiet. A reign can be private. A reign can simply be, I kept the lamp lit, so tonight, as the list flows, allow it to become a lullaby for your own sense of time. You don't have to measure everything precisely. You can simply feel the steady truth. Time moves, chapters change, and still there is continuity. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the continuity is the wall. In the King list, the continuity is the sequence. In your own life, continuity might be something even smaller. The way you make tea, the way you lock the door, the way you place your phone down at night, the way you return to bed, even after a hard day. Small rituals are the bread loaves of our time, humble markers that say, another day happened and you are still here. Now let the museum room deepen into evening. Imagine the sound of your own breathing blending with the imagined hush of the gallery. A soft hum from the building, a distant creak as the structure settles. Nothing urgent, nothing calling you back into the day. If your mind tries to pull you into questions, was the flood real? What exactly happened? Why did they write this? You can smile gently at the mind the way you might smile at a child asking for one more story. You can say, not tonight. Tonight we are allowed to simply listen. Because sleep does not ask for conclusions. Sleep asks for surrender, and surrender can be tender. So we will do what the prism does, we will repeat. Not to argue, but to soothe. Name, city, rain. Name, city, rain. Let the words become softer each time, like a voice fading while the listener drifts. If you want one more image to hold, imagine a river at night near an ancient city. The water reflects the moon in broken silver. The banks are lined with reeds. A lantern glows from a doorway, then another farther away, then another. The farther lanterns are dimmer, and the dimness is not sad. It is simply distance. The night accepts all distances, and you too can accept distance tonight. The distance from the past, the distance from your worries, the distance from whatever you feel you should have solved by now. You do not need to cross every distance tonight. You only need to rest. In the next part, we will return one last time to the anchor line, let it dissolve into quiet, and begin the final descent into the outro, the part where the story closes softly, without cliffhangers, and leaves you in peace. The museum room is now so quiet in your imagination that it almost feels like it's floating. The air is still. The light is low. The glass case holds the clay prism the way night holds the world, without effort, without judgment, without needing anything from it. If you are listening with eyes closed, you might notice how the darkness behind your eyelids has its own soft texture. If your eyes are open, you might notice the room you're in becoming gentler at the edges. Either way, you are allowed to loosen your grip on the day. Tonight, we bring everything back to one sentence, and not to make it dramatic, but to make it simple. Then the flood swept over. When we first met this line, it felt like a door. Now, after traveling through the names and cities, through Uruk's wall and the bread loaves, it can become something else, a breath. Then, the flood swept over. Say it quietly in your mind and let your exhale follow it. The sentence can sit inside your breathing like a small boat in slow water. This is one of the gentlest things storytelling can do. Take something that could be heavy and turn it into a rhythm the body can accept. Because the flood in this story is not only water. It is a symbol for the moment's life closes a chapter, the moment a season ends, the The moment you realize you cannot live exactly as you lived before. The moment your body asks you to slow down. And maybe you have had a flood like that, an overflow of work, of worry, of responsibility, of grief. Maybe you have had a moment when you felt the world was too much and something had to give. If you have, let me offer you a softer framing tonight. Not a debate, not a conclusion, just a gentle possibility. What if the overflow is sometimes a closing, not a punishment, not an accusation, a closing? A world steps back, a curtain falls, the stage goes dark for a moment, and then quietly, the next scene begins. Smaller, closer, more human. This is how the king list reads after the floodline. The rains shrink, the scale changes, the story becomes something a person can carry, and in that there is kindness, because the older you become, the more you realize that the grandest thing a human can do is not to be endless, but to be steady. To build, to tend, to care for what remains. Uruk's wall, daily bread, wedges in clay, a lamp on a desk, a breath in your chest. If your mind is still restless, we can do something very small and very soothing. We can let the list become a chant again, but quieter, as if it's being whispered from far away. Name, city, rain, not to keep you awake, to let your brain relax into repetition. Imagine the scribe's hand, slow, careful, pressing the stylus into clay. The sound is so soft it's almost imagined, a tiny tap, like a raindrop. The scribe is not rushing. He is not trying to win. He is doing what humans do when the world feels uncertain. He is making order, one mark at a time. This is not unlike what you are doing tonight just by listening. You are making order. You are choosing a steady thread to hold while the day dissolves. And it is enough. Now imagine the museum itself as a kind of shelter. You are inside a place where time is held gently. Outside, the city might still be moving, cars passing, lights changing, phones vibrating with invisible demands. But inside, time slows down. Inside, objects are allowed to simply be. Inside, the world is not asking you to perform. That's what this story is tonight. A museum room in the mind, a place where you can stand quietly beside something ancient and feel your nervous system soften. If tonight's story has reminded you of a beautiful memory, maybe the smell of old books, the hush of a gallery, the warmth of a lamp on a winter night, you can hold that memory like a small lantern. Not to think about intensely, just to let it glow. And if you can't find a memory, that's okay too. The present moment can be enough. Your breathing can be enough, in and out. Let your shoulders drop a little more. Let your tongue rest in your mouth. Let your hands relax, unclench without forcing. Then the flood swept over. One final time, not as a riddle, but as a lullaby line. Then the flood swept over. And now we begin the slow closing. No cliffhanger, no sharp turn, only the gentle sense that the story has done what it needed to do. It has walked you from curiosity into calm. In the next part, we will return to the glass case one last time. Let the wedges blur into texture, let the lanterns along the river fade into distance, and end with a soft acceptance that some gaps in history do not need to be filled tonight. The museum has been quiet for a long time now. In your imagination, the last footsteps of the day have faded down the corridor. The doors have settled into their locks and the building has become a wide, calm shell, holding only soft light and patient air. Somewhere far away, perhaps a night guard moves slowly, not to disturb anything, but to make sure everything is safe. His keys make the smallest sound, barely a whisper of metal, then even that disappears. The museum returns to stillness, the kind of stillness that feels like a blanket laid gently over a sleeping city. In the gallery, the glass case waits. Inside it, the clay prism rests with no ambition at all. It does not try to be impressive. It does not try to be understood. It simply remains small, warm-toned, covered in wedges like a field of tiny footprints. If you lean closer in your mind, you can see how the marks change with the angle of light. Some wedges look sharp, others soften into faint shadows. From a distance, the writing is almost like a pattern on fabric, something the eyes can glide over without needing to read. And maybe that is what you need tonight. Not more meaning, but more pattern. Not more answers, but more softness. Then the flood swept over. The sentence is still there, and yet it has already begun to dissolve into quiet. It is no longer a door you must open. It is a line you can touch and then let go, the way you might touch a window and feel the coolness, then withdraw your hand and return to the warmth of the bed. In the king list, after that line, the world becomes human-sized. In the epic, after the long searching, the world becomes home-sized. Bread, walls, lamps, work that can be done by hands that get tired. This is the gentle direction of the night too. The night does not expand your obligations. It shrinks them until they fit inside one breath, inside one exhale, inside one quiet decision to rest. So we will shrink the story now until it fits inside a smaller space. Imagine the clay prism not as a document, but as an object that once lived in a real room. A scribe carried wet clay, shaped it, smoothed it. He pressed signs into it while the clay was still soft, while the lamp burned low, while outside the air cooled. Later, the clay was baked, and the marks became permanent, like thoughts turned into stone. But the scribe himself was not permanent. He was a person with a body, with eyelids that grew heavy, with a stomach that needed food, with hands that sometimes trembled from fatigue. He likely went home at night. He likely slept. He likely woke and returned again to press more wedges, to copy more lines, to keep the record steady. Who was he? We do not know his name. The prism does not give it to us, and that absence is strangely comforting. It reminds us that history is full of unnamed caretakers, people who held the world together quietly without being remembered individually. Tonight, you don't have to be remembered, you only have to be cared for. If your mind has been trying to fill every gap, why this happened, what that meant, what the future will bring, you can practice something softer here. Allowing a gap to remain a gap. Allowing a question to remain a question. Not forever, but just for tonight. Because there are times when the most healing thing is not completion, but permission. Permission to stop searching. Permission to stop forcing the mind to solve everything at bedtime. In the glass case, the prism's edges are slightly worn. Time has touched it, but time has not destroyed it. That too is a quiet lesson. The world can change you without erasing you. Years can pass without taking away the essential warmth you still carry. Think of the bread again, how it changed day by day beside Gilgamesh as he slept. The bread hardened, but it remained bread. Time moved through it, but it did not turn it into something unrecognizable. It simply showed its days. You are allowed to show your days too. You are allowed to be changed by them, softened by some, hardened by others, without needing to apologize for the way time has shaped you. Now let the museum light dim a little more. Not suddenly, just as if the bulb above the case is tired and decides to glow more gently. The wedges on the prism become less distinct. They blur slightly, like stars behind thin cloud. And in that blur, the mind can finally stop trying to count, name, city, rain. The words fall away from their meanings and become sound, a quiet rhythm, a slow rocking, name, city, rain. And beneath that rhythm, your breathing continues in and out, steady, warm, unforced. You are safe, and nothing else is required now. If you notice tension anywhere, behind the eyes, in the throat, across the chest, imagine it as a tight knot in a thread. You don't have to yank it open, just breathe near it. Let the breath be warm water, and let the knot loosen on its own time. Then the flood swept over. One more time, softer than before, as if spoken from the far end of a hallway. Then the flood swept over. And now the sentence can fade. The seam remains, but it no longer needs your attention. The story has already delivered its gentlest gift, the sense that endings can be quiet, and what follows can be tender. In the next part, we will let the museum room become almost completely dark, keep only one small warmth, like a lantern on a desk, and close the story with a simple acceptance. The world turns, the records remain, and you can rest inside the turning. The museum is almost entirely dark now in your imagination, but not in a frightening way, more like the way a room becomes dark when you are already comfortable in bed. The darkness is gentle, it has soft edges, it doesn't demand anything from your eyes. Only one small light remains in the gallery, a low, warm glow above the glass case, like a lantern left on for someone who might still be walking slowly through the night. Inside the case, the clay prism rests the way a sleeping animal rests, still, steady, untroubled. The wedges on its surface are no longer sharp details, they are texture, they are a quiet pattern, and your mind can let them be pattern, nothing more. Name, city, rain. The old rhythm returns one last time, not as information, but as a rocking motion, like a lullaby sung too softly to be fully heard, but perfectly heard by the body. Name, city, rain. You have traveled far tonight without ever leaving your place of rest. You walked along Uruk's wall under starlight. You watched the bread line become a tender calendar. You saw time measured in sars and in loaves. You returned to the seam in the story and learned to hold it as a breath instead of a threat. And now, the story does what sleep stories do best. It closes the door quietly so you don't have to. Then the flood swept over. We say it once more, not as a question, not as a riddle, not as a debate, only as an anchor that is already dissolving. Then the flood swept over. And we let it go, because the most peaceful ending is not a cliffhanger. It is a soft acceptance that some gaps in history do not need to be filled tonight. Some questions can remain open without hurting you. Some chapters can close without being explained. And the world will still continue, not with violence, but with ordinary mercy. The old world closes, the new world begins, and what remains is what humans do best. We tend walls, one brick at a time. We tend bread, one day at a time. We tend records, one wedge at a time. We tend each other, sometimes without names. We tend ourselves, one breath at a time. If you remember only one thought from tonight, let it be this: soft, warm, and simple. The most beautiful things often arrive in silence. And perhaps in your own life, the most meaningful strength has never been in being endless. It has been in being steady, in returning, in carrying a small light forward even when the world feels large. If this story brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself. Only if you want to, only when you're awake enough. And don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. But for now, you don't have to do anything. Let the museum light fade even more. Imagine the lantern dimming until it is only a warm ember. Imagine the glass case becoming a soft outline in the dark. Imagine the prism resting inside, patient, complete, unconcerned. Your breathing is the only sound that matters now, in and out, slow enough that the exhale feels like a gentle closing, in and out, like waves that never hurry. And if your mind begins to drift into sleep, into that quiet place where thoughts soften and shapes blur, let it drift. Let it go where it wants to go. Like Gilgamesh, you are allowed to sleep. Like the scribe, you are allowed to stop pressing wedges for the night. Like the museum, you are allowed to close the doors and leave the world outside. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. Good night.